The Assizes of Jerusalem represent one of the most fascinating and complex legal systems of the medieval period, emerging in the unique context of the Crusader states in the Levant. These laws were not simply imported European codes, rather, they evolved as a hybrid legal tradition, merging feudal norms from Western Europe with the practical realities of governing a diverse, multi-religious society under constant military threat. To understand the Assizes is to peer into a world where knights, merchants, clergy, and local populations had to navigate an intricate web of rights, duties, and obligations, all under the banner of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The Kingdom of Jerusalem was established after the First Crusade in 1099, a period marked by the capture of the city itself, along with a patchwork of surrounding territories. From the outset, the Crusader leaders faced the enormous challenge of transplanting Western feudal institutions into an unfamiliar Eastern environment. Unlike in Europe, where authority was often distributed among hereditary lords and centralized kings, the Crusader states had to contend with continuous threats from neighboring Muslim powers, a shortage of settled populations loyal to the new rulers, and the logistical demands of managing fortified cities and pilgrimage routes. It was in this context that the Assizes developed, a legal framework that codified feudal relationships, property rights, and procedures for justice, while allowing for flexibility in response to the extraordinary circumstances of the Levant. The origins of the Assizes are somewhat murky. They were traditionally attributed to the earliest kings of Jerusalem, particularly Godfrey of Bouillon and Baldwin I, who, according to later chronicles, sought to establish rules for their knights and vassals. However, the formal compilation of the Assizes likely took place in the mid-12th century, around the reign of Baldwin II and Amalric I, with major revisions continuing into the 13th century. The Assizes were primarily concerned with feudal law, defining the rights of lords over their vassals, inheritance procedures, military obligations, and the judicial powers of the king and barons. Yet, they also addressed the realities of life in the Holy Land, regulations concerning the treatment of non-Christians, the administration of towns, maritime trade, and even the legal status of pilgrims passing through the kingdom. One of the defining characteristics of the Assizes was their detailed approach to land tenure and inheritance. Land was the central source of power in the Crusader states, and the Assizes carefully codified who could inherit property, under what conditions, and how disputes were to be resolved. Unlike European law, where primogeniture, the eldest son inheriting all, was standard, the Assizes allowed for more nuanced solutions, sometimes dividing estates among multiple heirs or giving widows protective rights over land until their children came of age. This legal flexibility was necessary in a frontier society where mortality was high due to warfare and disease, and where maintaining stable governance required careful negotiation of loyalties. Another notable aspect of the Assizes was the emphasis on military service and the responsibilities of knights. The Crusader states were constantly under threat from Muslim forces, and the kingdom relied heavily on a network of vassals who owed military service in exchange for their fiefs. The Assizes specified the number of days a knight was required to serve, the obligations for castle defense, and even the types of equipment that had to be provided. Beyond military duties, knights were also bound by codes regulating conduct, ensuring that their private actions did not undermine public order or the king's authority. The Assizes were also remarkable for their hybrid approach to justice. While they drew heavily from European feudal law, they incorporated procedures adapted from local customs and the practicalities of governing a multi-religious society. For example, the Assizes made distinctions between Christians, Muslims, and Jews in legal matters, particularly in property disputes or contractual obligations. Non-Christians were generally afforded protection for their lives and property, but their testimony in court was often weighted differently, reflecting both religious prejudice and political necessity. This legal pluralism was a hallmark of the Crusader states, allowing them to function despite the cultural and religious diversity of the population. A key institution in enforcing the Assizes was the Haute Cour, or High Court, of Jerusalem. This body was composed of the kingdom's most powerful lords and clerics, and it served as the supreme judicial authority. The Haute Cour adjudicated disputes among the nobility, confirmed the king's decisions, and provided a forum where vassals could challenge or appeal legal rulings. The existence of such a court illustrates how the Assizes were not merely a set of written rules, but a living legal culture, dependent on the participation of both rulers and subjects. Over time, the procedural aspects of the Assizes, including summonses, oaths, and trial by combat, became increasingly codified, influencing legal developments in other Crusader states like Tripoli and Antioch. The influence of the Assizes extended beyond their immediate context. After the fall of Jerusalem in 1187 to Saladin, and the later loss of Acre in 1291, the Crusader nobility migrated to Cyprus and other Mediterranean islands. There, they carried the Assizes with them, ensuring the survival of this unique legal tradition long after the original kingdom had disappeared. Legal scholars in Europe also studied the Assizes, intrigued by their blend of feudal law and practical governance under extraordinary circumstances. In this way, the Assizes of Jerusalem became both a symbol of Crusader statecraft and a testament to the adaptability of medieval law. Despite their sophistication, the Assizes were never a perfect system. Enforcement was inconsistent, and the volatile political and military environment often undermined the law. Kings had to balance the demands of powerful barons, religious authorities, and foreign allies, making the application of justice a complex negotiation. Nevertheless, the Assizes provided a framework for stability in a frontier society, legitimizing authority, regulating relations between rulers and subjects, and creating a semblance of order amid the chaos of war. They represent a rare example of a legal system that was consciously designed for a society in constant crisis, a hybrid of European ideals and Eastern realities, crafted to serve both the sword and the scales of justice. From a historical perspective, the Assizes of Jerusalem reveal much about the nature of law in societies facing extreme pressures. They show that law is not static but adapts to context, responding to challenges of geography, demography, religion, and military necessity. They also illustrate the interplay between written codes and social practice. While the Assizes were codified, their effectiveness depended on the willingness of nobles, knights, and townspeople to abide by them. In many ways, the Assizes were less about rigid enforcement than about creating shared expectations of behavior, providing mechanisms for dispute resolution, and sustaining social cohesion in an environment where survival depended on cooperation as much as conquest. In conclusion, the Assizes of Jerusalem stand as a remarkable achievement of medieval legal culture. They are more than a set of feudal regulations, they are a window into a society that had to reconcile imported European norms with the realities of governing a diverse, frontier kingdom in the Holy Land. Their detailed treatment of land tenure, military obligations, inheritance, and pluralistic justice demonstrates the sophistication and pragmatism of Crusader law. Moreover, their legacy persisted long after the fall of the Crusader states, influencing legal traditions in Cyprus and beyond. Studying the Assizes allows historians and legal scholars alike to understand not only the mechanics of medieval law but also the ways in which law can be a tool for governance, social order, and cultural adaptation in extraordinary circumstances.